Hello and welcome to the Green Collar Careers Podcast. I'm your host, Jose Almanzar, a practicing environmental attorney and former environmental scientist. This podcast is all about exploring careers in sustainability in the environmental field, what they look like, how to get started, and how to grow into them. Each episode, I sit down with professionals who have built meaningful careers in this space to hear their stories, how they got started, the challenges they faced, and the advice I have for anyone looking to break in or level up. Whether you're a student, a career changer, or just passionate about making a difference, these conversations will have something valuable for you. Thank you so much for spending time with us. Let's dive right in. Hello and welcome back to Green Collar Careers. This is a podcast where we talk with people building meaningful careers in environmental, climate, and sustainability work. Today's guest is Stacy Savage. Stacy is the founder of Zero Waste Strategies, and she's built a career that spans from grassroots organizing, policy work, and now she helps companies rethink their waste, sustainability, and their business case for doing things differently. Stacy, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thank you so much for having me.
I'm happy to have you. And finally, we got a chance to connect. It's been a few months. We were playing kind of hot potato for a few months, and finally, we were able to carve some time. So, Stacy, before we get into all the substantive things, because I want to hear about zero waste and kind of your career trajectory, I have to ask. And I grew up watching WWF and now WWE. Was the Texas Trash Talker name that you've given yourself inspired by professional wrestling at all?
No.
Because it sounds like a wrestler's, like, name, like, the Texas
Mhm.
Trash Talker, like, that's like, WWE, if they're listening right now, they should pay you for the trademark for that.
I'm
Uh
not giving it up. That's my moniker.
Alright, so tell me, how'd you come into that, what inspired that name? Did you just know it from even before you started Zero Waste?
Yeah, it was kind of one of those things where it just popped into my head one day. I saw like an old webinar or something like that. And this was way back in like 2013 when I first started my business. And I saw, a colleague's webinar and it was, talking trash. And I was like, okay, that's really funny. Um, and then several months later, it just kind of popped into my head. Well, I talk trash every day. Why don't I just call myself the Texas Trash Talker? I mean, that kind of cements what I do and what part of the country I'm in. So
I mean,
why not?
it when people talk about having an elevator pitch and having that 15-second. I mean, all you have to say is, "I'm the Texas trash talker." That does so many things. One, it
Mhm.
clearly identifies, kind of what you do, but it puts it in such a cryptic way that it invites the person to ask you more. So now you've got me thinking, I need to come up with something like that for my freaking environmental career.
And, it's just a play on words and it's just kind of, and I can put the little cowboy emoji
Love
behind
it.
my name and the little recycling signs. People are like, "Oh yeah, Texas trash talker. She's a Texan and she talks trash."
I
So,
love it.
okay.
I love it. And then you grew up in, I think you grew up in Texas. And what
Mhm.
part of Texas did you grow up in?
I grew up in Southeast Texas, along the
Okay.
coast, the Gulf Coast, and the Louisiana borders. So you're looking at a bona fide Cajun on both sides of her family.
All right. Fair enough. Fair enough. And crawdads all through and through.
Yep.
Uh,
Yep. Etouffee, you got all Granny's gumbo recipes. Yep.
Love it. Love it. And so growing up in that part of Texas, what early experiences kind of exposed you to environmental issues? What drew you? Did anything in your childhood kind of stand out that got you interested in the environment?
It's the thing that stood
Mm,
out and got me involved is I grew up under the brown hazy skies and rotten egg smells of the Texas oil and gas industry. And I
mm.
witnessed firsthand the environmental toll of oil refineries, petrochemical plants. You know, my both my mom and dad, aunts, uncles, cousins, they all worked at the plant. Um, there's, Dow Chemical, there's Chevron, there's Texaco, there's all these different chemical companies and oil refining companies. My mom worked at Texaco for 35 years. My dad worked at Chevron, which used to be Gulf, um, for 45 years. So, my a lot of people in that area are kind of caught in a stranglehold economically with the ties they have to that industry, because it's really the only major lucrative industry in the area that can secure your retirement, as well as put their kids through college.
Mm,
So,
yeah.
it's because of the oil and gas industry that I am where I am, but it's also why I do what I do. And these experiences really hit home. um, and there's the flooding that comes from climate change. My mom was caught in Hurricane Harvey,
Mm,
10 however many years ago it was. My childhood home was flooded, and there's trash choked bayous around the area. It just really sparked my awareness as a young teenager. I was the kid that always brought the stray pets home. you
mm.
know
Oh boy.
um and I once I left home after graduating high school, I moved to the Dallas area and went to University of Texas at Arlington. And just like our queen Alicia Keys says, concrete jungle. Um, and I finally moved to the Austin area in 1999, and I found this mecca of greenery, of natural fed springs, of a bunch of nonprofit do-gooders. So I kind of found my people in
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
in that area. So I never knew that you could get paid doing nonprofit work. I always thought, oh, it's a nonprofit, so you don't get paid, but that's not
Yeah.
true. And I kind of through my own path, my own uh, wandering, found that nonprofit work was one of the key pieces that kind of launched me into doing this kind of work with a statewide environmental nonprofit that I found in the Austin area.
At UT, what was your major or your kind of your focus for your studies?
Biology.
Okay.
Yeah, I wanted to be a marine biologist.
Of course you were taking all those stray animals and you figured, let me
Yeah.
let me get a and what happened in those years? Because 'cause you're not a marine biologist, so what,
Mm-mm.
did anything happen in those years that you were like, "All right, marine biology maybe isn't for me," or is that something you were thinking about doing maybe later on? How
I
take us
you
through
know,
that.
I really struggled as a student. I had undiagnosed ADHD.
Mhm.
I didn't get diagnosed until 4 years ago at age 46.
Got it.
So, women and girls don't get diagnosed with these
Mhm.
things very often,
Yeah.
and in a timely manner.
Yeah.
Um, and, early diagnosis is not something, it's pretty rare in girls. So I don't know, just this whole school route, was very difficult. It wasn't quite for me.
Mhm.
Um, and so, yeah, I moved to Austin, and um, I started slinging fajitas and margaritas at a Mexican restaurant.
There you go.
And, that's where I got my gift of gab, honestly, was, I could talk to anybody for any reason on, almost any subject. It didn't matter your political leanings or your religious beliefs or your socioeconomic status. We could just chat, and that's just the sign of a good bartender, as well, and servers. So, just to make people feel at home, right? And like they're the valued customer that they are. And so it was just right then and there. I knew I could talk to people. And um, one day, on the back of the Austin Chronicle, which is our weekly circular down here, there was a little ad on in the very back on the back page. It was about this big, and it said, "Get paid to fight the man." And I was
Okay.
like, "Okay, cool, but who's the man?" I had no idea.
Huh.
Clueless. I did not know. I grew up kind of sheltered. We did not have dinner table discussions about, um, voting rights, environmental degradation. Even though we're in Southeast Texas, we didn't have any discussions about civic duty. I never saw my mom vote once. I've
Hmm.
never participated in a nonprofit kind of volunteer organization. None of those things. It was just, go to school, do your extracurricular activities, come home, do your homework, eat, go to bed kind of thing. So it was never really, um, outside of the home that we did much, and or much for the community, I should say. And so I got a rude awakening whenever I found out that who the man actually was, and that circles around capitalism and
Uh-huh.
patriarchal standards and that kind of thing. So I I started understanding these systems of oppression, and got a very deep education, because the work that I was doing, because of that ad that I found in the back of the paper, was door-to-door grassroots community organizing for the environmental nonprofit that I worked for 9 years. And
What's the
so
name of
over
the
the
nonprofit?
Texas Campaign for the Environment.
Mhm.
So TCE was, one of the premier canvassing organizations in the state, and we went door to door all over all over the state, talking to people on their front porch, just everyday
So
conversations about pollution, recycling issues, government accountability, corporate accountability, getting them involved in the whole process, the democratic process,
so
lowercase d.
I wanna paint the picture here. So, Southeast Texas girl, decides to head up to Dallas to go to college, declares biology, wants to be a marine biologist. Schooling, not your vibe at the time. You decide to head over to Austin, and you started taking a job as a bartender at a restaurant. And then during that job, you came across, while you were working there, you came across this ad for the
Mhm,
Texas Campaign for the Environment, and you said, "Let me go see what this is about."
mhm.
Okay, and then you did that for 9 years. That's a long time.
Yeah, and, that I was doing door to door full time for about 3.5 years, and then I was promoted to directing the canvas operation, up for about 3 years, and then I was promoted again to be the program manager for statewide legislation.
So, and are we speaking now early 2000s, or is that around the time?
Mhm. Yeah,
Okay.
so 2003 to 2012 was when I
And
was
what was
knocking
your
on doors
region?
and
Was it
organizing.
was it just kind of the Austin area, or were
Mm-mm.
you covering just no, not
We had we had a, we had a Project 181, and Project 181 is when you go into all 181 legislative districts of the entire state of Texas. So we toured everywhere. And I also had, I was recruited to do trainings at other offices in Ohio, New Jersey, Michigan, Colorado, Florida. Um, they kind of sent me to other canvassing offices to teach new organizers how to effectively communicate and get people involved in their own democratic process, and get involved with the organization as a paying member, a petition signer, and get letters to their lawmakers.
so I have to ask, and you'll have to excuse my ignorance here because I'm not from Texas. I've spent only very limited time in Texas. But I'm imagining that in the early 2000s, a young woman going door to door speaking about environmental issues could go one of two ways. Either somebody was excited to see you and they'd welcome you, or perhaps maybe there were people that weren't so attuned or receptive to kind of green messaging,
Mhm.
or that perhaps maybe you received not so welcoming, people. Am I off base there?
No, it was 50-50.
50-50.
Every
And
door was 50-50.
how did you handle we can speak about the positive ones, and those are all nice and flowery, but kind of those negative interactions, how did they manifest and how did you deal with that?
It took a lot of emotional regulation, and so
Mm,
when somebody when I come to your door, I knock, they open, it's like, "Hi, I'm Stacy with Texas Campaign for the Environment. We're out here organizing your community." I still remember the
of
script to this
course,
day.
of course.
And we're working on XYZ issue, talking to all your neighbors. Um, they can either say, I'm not interested," or, yeah, let me take a look at what you got. So if it was the not interested, I'm like, okay, great. Thanks for your time. Have a great day. And I move on to the next door. So you're trained from the get-go, day one, to let things just roll off you, not to have altercations, not to fight back. You're not there to change anybody's mind, whether they care about mercury in the water or not. You're there to find the supporters and get them involved. So you have to qualify them very early on to make sure you're not wasting your time. We only had
Yeah.
5 hours in, each night in those communities. So it was important to as many people as you possibly could in order to find the supporters, get them involved at whatever level they were comfortable with. So they could just sign the petition, they could sign it and back it with a donation. We were 50,000 members strong across the state that's paying
Mm.
members. Or you could sign the petition and just handwrite a letter to your lawmaker. You could get your kids involved and they could draw pictures for the lawmakers as well. There's all kinds of ways that people could have gotten involved. We didn't push it. We're like, this is the issue. Here's the problem. Here's the solution. You're the strategy. Would you like to get involved?
I have to tell you that kind of experience, and I've done sales. I haven't done
Mm,
canvassing, but I've done other types of canvassing with, from a marketing perspective.
mhm,
I was not great at it, mostly because I wasn't passionate about the stuff that I was marketing. I just did it as a job to take a job. But the experience of going up to people and getting rejected and then being able to do it again and again and again with a straight face and a chipper attitude. That's a skill that a lot of people don't have, and it's something that really should be learned, especially for anyone going into
mm,
business. Um, and then the other thing is that you were learning, you had this script and you still remember it,
mhm.
but you had this, you were learning substantive issues and then refining the message after every time you went so that by the time you were done with a day, I'm imagining that you had such nuanced insight as to the issue, and then you could speak about it intelligently, not just to people that you were canvassing, but then in the spaces that you occupied back home. Am I fair in that?
Yeah, I mean, we would always come back and have a roundtable after our sessions out in the community of what are the most common objections that you're hearing from folks. And then we would develop how to combat that. I hadn't heard this one before, but how do we develop messaging around this particular fear from these 6 people, that said this one thing, over the course. Maybe there was a new, uh, documentary that came out,
Hmm.
that spoke to the issues, and they're like, "Oh, well, we haven't seen the document." Well, you need to watch the documentary so that we can gather the intel of what they're talking about on their end, and so that we can combat what they're saying with actual truth. Or, there was several times whenever we were working on e-waste legislation, so getting manufacturers like Dell, Apple, and HP to take back and recycle responsibly for free for their consumers in Texas. And there was a 60 Minutes piece that came out that was just that's the one thing that people kept bringing up is that, oh, these electronics are just going to get shipped to China and they're going to get dumped on the shores of China. I was like, that's already happening. If we
Mm.
pass this legislation, and I need your help to do so, then the manufacturers are responsible for taking back their own products and doing that for free for Texans all across the state, and they can't dump.
Hmm.
So we have, provisions in the legislation that require responsible recycling rather than dumping. So I need you to come on board, sign this petition, go get your checkbook, and we need you to write a letter to your lawmaker.
That's policy advocacy and lobbying in action. That's really, I mean, legislators pay for that kind of data because you were getting real time feedback from constituents. And so I'm imagining that TCE would then use that data that you're all gathering from the field to one refine, like you said, refine the messaging, but then also they could use that when they were having lobbying campaigns and advocacy campaigns, I'm imagining, right?
Yeah, and it's because of the public pressure that were able to build and galvanize, the public outcry, the public sentiment to lawmakers, and we were able to go to Dell. We our entire Part of our entire letter writing campaign was to Dell's house in Austin.
Mm.
to his public, his public address.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
he was, and we saw in a newspaper, he was like, well, we're not getting any letters, because one of the reporters that had interviewed TCE said that we understood that we were generating thousands of letters to Dell. And he was like, well, we're not getting any letters. What are you talking about, letters? And they were all going to like a post office. So we finally found out what his actual home address was, and we changed the address on the flyer. It was like, you're not getting letters, you're going to get letters now. So
Oh
that
gosh.
finally got him to the table, and we were able to start talking with him. And he was like, you know what, you're right. This is, extended producer responsibility legislation. We need to be responsible for the products, not the taxpayer. Whenever our products are ending up dumped on the side of the road in dry creek beds or ending up in landfills, because they're full of toxic chemicals, lead, mercury, arsenic, and they don't belong in landfills. So let's recover them. Let's refurbish them. Let's reuse them, remanufacture them, and put them back into the system as new profit, rather than spending money mining virgin materials for new products. So it clicked, they got it, and then they helped us write the legislation. They helped us lobby for it. They had their name on it, and they're the largest employer in Central Texas. We got a 100% yes vote
That's
in all
amazing.
181 districts.
That's incredible. I hope anyone listening who's in policy and advocacy, that's right out of the playbook. I mean, the way that you guys approach that. So I know it was many years ago, and I commend you for that, though, because I'm sure you played, and everyone that you worked with played a huge role in that. I want to pivot real quickly because at some point, and you've mentioned early in your childhood how large, companies, for many reasons, they were the largest employer in the region, but also part of the largest source of pollution, air pollution in the region, and probably other sources of pollution. And then we're speaking about extended producer responsibility, kind of companies taking, accountability for the waste, the end waste of their products. Um, you made a shift from, you know, grassroots activism to then working directly with, companies, as your clientele. What led to that decision? What was, what was going through your mind where you said, all right, I think I have something here, and my clients are actually going to be companies.
Yeah. So when I had quit the nonprofit in 2012, I had found other work doing political campaigns, and they were so uh, partisan. And 9 years prior in the nonprofit work, we were all doing nonpartisan work. I don't care what part of the state you were from, what the average income level or what side of the aisle. There's mercury still in our water. So that was my,
Mm,
that kind of nonpartisan language that we would use. But then after that, I switched to door-to-door campaigning for political candidates, and it became very vitriolic
mm,
and, kind of shit slinging, and I didn't like it. It left a really bad taste in my mouth, and I was like, "What am I gonna do? What am I gonna do? What am I gonna do?" I'm driving home, and I'm sitting at a light waiting to turn into my neighborhood, and I was just off in a daze. I was just thinking like, nothing was going through my brain, honestly. I was just like trying to relax from the day, right? And all of a sudden, epiphany, boom, lightning bolt through my body. I swear it stiffened my spine, and I sat straight up. And I said, Stacy, you need to start a zero waste consulting business. I was like,
mm,
all the lawmakers, their aides, the city council members, their aides, the county commissioners, their aides, all of the environmental heavy hitters across the state in these nonprofit institutions, and all the haulers, the trash guys, the composters, the recycler. Why aren't you the hub for zero waste services and resources? So that's what I did. The very next day, changed my life forever. I went down to the Travis County Courthouse. I slapped down my $17 and I got my DBA. Had no idea what I was doing, but I knew that that's what I was doing.
you had listen. I speak about, and I love what you just said, which was, first of all, something came to you. It it almost came. It was like a sign from something. You
The universe slapped me upside
want
the
to,
head. It's
you know,
basically.
if people are religious, they would say God. If people are just spiritual, they might say, the earth or the universe. Something hit you because we are a receiver of signals and transmission, and you received some signal from somewhere that said, "Hey, Stacy, wake up! This is what you should be doing. You have
Mhm,
been doing this quietly, and now you need to kind of put it all together." And then you did something that I think a lot of people wouldn't do, which is you went ahead and started and took action with no plan.
yep,
You were just like, I don't know how I'm going to make this work, but the first step is getting my DBA because you took that small little step to make it real.
mhm,
And so I think for people listening, the lesson there is if you have a feeling, act on it. And
mhm.
things, you have to kind of go on faith a little bit.
It's yeah. When you have alignment and you've got, alignment with your core values, right? And then you've got this nudge from the ether, this idea, this impulse, and you think it's your bright idea. It's not your bright idea. You are being guided
Mm,
to take this path and this trajectory. So that's I mean,
I love it.
that day was the day that where it all hit me, because that it drove me to take that extreme action of getting up, going the next day, and I was so excited. I leapt out of bed the next morning, and I was like, "I'm going down to the county courthouse," and because I researched it the night before whenever I got home from that experience in my car, and I was just like, "What do I need to do to start a business?" And I just started researching immediately, and then the next morning, it was like 8 AM, and I was out of there. I went down to the county courthouse, and I had my cash ready to go.
What and you said something great that I think is a sign that you're doing what you ought to be doing, which is that you shot out of bed the next morning with excitement.
Mhm,
And I'm sure we're going to get into this in a second. Every day isn't like that. There are, I'm sure, days where getting out of bed is a pain in the butt because you have to deal with people or things that maybe are not kind of what you want to be dealing with. But for the most part, would you say that you still feel that kind of excitement about what you do?
yeah, and it's actually even more because I have clients that I'm accountable to now, that I have to meet their deadlines, and I am there's an urgency that I have every morning. So, it really I didn't know what I was doing, but I knew I had to do it, and that's just kind of what fueled me the first couple of years. So, and it was scary because I was trading secure, steady paychecks for incredible amounts of uncertainty. So the biggest hurdles were like the cash flow droughts and learning sales very quickly.
Mm.
And then, just devouring info on how to price myself. And I, I had that mentality of, working in nonprofit for 9 years, and I was only making like $10 an hour. It's not like a huge lucrative kind of thing. It was really passion fueled for me. But then I had to make the switch to business owner, where I had to knot my tie kind of thing, and uh, get down to brass tacks about how I was going to actually structure my business and what I felt I was worthy of earning on an hourly basis or a contractual basis, and I had to do a lot of soul searching
So,
because I had that kind of, low pay mentality, and
mm,
I was giving everything away for free. I was letting people pick my brain, about how I started my business because they wanted to do the same thing, and, my husband was just like, "You gotta stop giving away your time for free." It's
mm,
like you've spent, at the time it was over a decade of now it's 22, 23 years, but
yeah,
at that time you've spent a decade honing your expertise, and you're
mm.
just giving it all away for free, and you're worth a lot more than that. Your time and energy and focus is worth a lot more than that. So I was just like, "Oh, you're right." I'd just been accustomed to having these passion projects, but now I need to actually structure my business. And what does that look like? What am I worth as a consultant? So I did a lot of soul searching and a lot of interviewing. I interviewed a lot of other consultants that were doing the same thing as me in the sustainability field. And, I got a lot of questions answered and I started to see the light.
So what are some of the biggest kind of challenges and maybe lessons learned from going from, employee, kind of working in the nonprofit space to then business owner? It's a completely
Mm.
different mindset shift. But what were some of the biggest challenges those early days in zero waste?
Um, Learning how to wear all the hats
Mm,
was the big one for me, and to learn to emotionally be okay with charging a fair price for your
mm,
expertise.
mm,
Those two things, were kind of the key drivers. And then I would say secondarily, getting my business structure in place. Whenever I first started, I didn't have a separate bank account. I just put everything on my personal bank account. Like it was
yep.
it was that elementary, and it was a real pain in the neck to try to separate all of my
Uh-huh.
expenses, on my statements and everything come tax time. So, I was just like, I guess I should get a business account.
You were doing the thing that attorneys tell people to not do, which is do not commingle your business
Right.
and your personal accounts. The second thing after opening up your DBA part should have been opening up a business account.
Yeah, yeah. Did I know that? No.
So in terms of and obviously careers are take many different forms, and certainly you went from, again, working in advocacy and grassroots to now consulting and kind of running your own business. But for people that are interested in kind of the intersection of sustainability and business, similar to what you do, what are some skill sets or things that they should consider if they want to kind of build up their careers, whether it's working for an institution or a company or perhaps doing their own thing? What's some advice you would give early career seekers?
Well, if you're going to go into work for a job and you're going to work for a company, a business, you have to be ready to walk a fine line
Hmm.
between what your predecessor had already put into place systems wise, and then also being innovative enough to bring in the new ideas and to implement those as well, and to make sure that it all falls into budget, and that your higher ups are on board with it as well. So you have to be able to kind of fold in the traditional systems that have already been put in place and be the innovator, um, for your company to get
Yeah.
further than what your predecessor got the company, to that level. So there's that kind of uh, tightrope act that you have to complete, or get really good at with that. If you're going into business for yourself, and this is why I created our Consulting for Women in Waste online training, a 12-week online training,
Love
for
it.
women who are in sustainability that want to start their own consulting firm, right?
Okay.
This is exactly, I take my 13 years of experience of business ownership, package it all up into a 12-week program, and then voila, we walk you through all the steps of what I had to experience, all the mistakes and pitfalls that I made, and we fast tracked you instead, and help you avoid all those mistakes, that are very costly, can be very costly. So, there's, if you're going out and doing it on your own, you have to have uh, enough faith in yourself and enough trust in your path, that you're gonna eventually figure it out. It might take a lot longer than you expected, like it did for me, because I didn't really have a mentor. Or you can seek a mentor who's already been, you know, been in those difficult situations and how
I'm
to get out of it. So, um,
I'm going to
there's
ask you I'm gonna ask you for, after this for and I'll put this in the show notes because I think it's an incredible resource that you have, a training program for specifically for women who want to, break into the sustainability space on their
Mhm.
own. So thank you for
Mhm.
raising that. Um, in terms of, for somebody who wants to, and it could be you when you first started, you were um 10 years, and yes, TCE was it was clearly in the environmental space, but let's say somebody who's been working for 10 or 15 years not doing environmental work, and they want
Mhm.
to break into the space, either working for an organization or a company, or doing like, how should someone go about that? What advice would you give someone?
I would say start local and look for environmental groups or nonprofits that you can get involved with. Maybe they've got, advocacy days at the state capitol, or they do, you can do public speaking at the citizen comment period at city council meeting. Um, you can go to uh, uh, most cities will have boards and commissions that people from the community volunteer to sit on. And a lot of times, what they do is vet rough drafts of policy and refine them before they get to the city council dais for a vote. And so that's what I did for 2 years. I sat on the City of Austin's Zero Waste Advisory Commission, and I was appointed by my city council member to be her eyes and ears on zero waste for that commission, and to use my expertise and input. But you don't have to be an expert to sit on one of these boards. If you've got a little bit of time, a little bit of time to invest in doing the additional research and helping build out strong policies for the community, then I think that's a worthwhile time to not only build your knowledge base, but also to build your resume as well. If you can put that little check that box on your resume that you served on a board or commission for the city of XYZ, then I think that's pretty commendable as well. But starting very local, starting with nonprofits, sitting on a board or commission, speaking, joining lobby days as well, and learning how to speak with your lawmakers on these issues, and doing additional research. Bringing your kids, getting your kids involved and putting them in the fold is a lot of ways that parents fuel their own learning, is getting their kids involved as well.
So you mentioned something, that's worth repeating now a third time, and this is for people who have a pull that they want to do something either for the environment or because of climate, or maybe they saw a documentary on whales and all of a sudden they get passionate about
Mhm,
ocean issues or coral reefs, acidifying, whatever it is. And everyone has different things that drive them. And our immediate thing is, well, I'm going to go big, and I want to go work for the Sierra Club, and I want to go work for the World Wildlife Federation. And those organizations are great. Don't get me wrong; they're doing amazing things. But the small organizations in your hometowns, they are doing as impactful work, and they are operating with zero resources.
mhm,
And they could use, if you are somebody that, you don't have to become an expert, but if you're somebody that wants to just learn more about an issue or see how it plays out in real time, go to those organizations. They could use you as a volunteer. That volunteer opportunity could turn into a part-time paid thing. Maybe they need a social media content person. Maybe they just need
mhm,
someone to help with their letter writing campaign. Maybe they need a canvasser. Make yourself available, take action, and eventually things will happen. Once you take action, things happen. Things don't happen and then you take action. You have to take action first. And Stacy's a living kind of proof of that, with her filing her DBA off of a off of a
off a whim.
off of a hunch. Stacy, I could speak with you all day. I'm going to ask you really one big question, then maybe one or two small questions. But looking back at your career, and you've been doing this for a few decades, what's something that you would tell, younger Stacy, not young Stacy, but younger Stacy, that 20-year-old, Stacy, looking back, any decisions that you would approach differently, anything that you would maybe have done differently? What advice would you give that Stacy?
Um, I would say, yeah, trust your grit, trust your gut, um, and really that having that innate sense of purpose is your superpower. And the things, if you want it, go after it, and the things that are supposed to happen will fall into place for you. Um, yes, it's gonna take a little bit of action on your part, but it's no coincidence that you meet the right people along the way, and so
Mm,
trusting that, and I'm having to tell myself that, every day, as well as that trust the process, and then, learn the business structure yesterday.
yep.
Um, get all your ducks in a row, so that you're not having to, experience those voids and pitfalls, um, and get a mentor. Your mentor is really key.
Nice. Well, I really appreciate you kind of giving us your time here, Stacey. I'm going to ask you again, maybe one other question. In terms of, are you reading or listening to any podcasts or audiobooks right now, or anything that's kind of driving, keep taking your attention outside of zero waste and maybe some of the work related stuff? Like, what are you doing in terms of content consuming that interests you these days?
Um, yeah, I think, there's a podcast called, How to Save a Planet, for
Okay.
grassroots hacks and, tracking, legislation, rulemaking, and that kind of thing. So, and then, also refining my course right now online, to make sure that any new enrollees have exactly what they need. So I'm spending a lot of time on that. But whenever I do need, to take a break, I am finding social justice content, my FYP, and seeing what other people are doing, in their communities to, uh, not only get active and involved in organizations or issues that they're passionate about, but also holding those who are in power accountable and calling out injustice and speaking truth to power. So my whole FYP is about people fighting the systems that are oppressing the regular everyday people, and that's what my entire career has been rooted in. And so it really brings me a lot of hope that people are still carrying the mantle, and I still go to protests myself. I went to several No Kings protests recently,
Mm,
and we see what's happening in Minneapolis, and it's happening in Texas as well. With immigration issues, and there's so much, and um, having investing in a little bit in Hope Core, I think is important because we get barraged with all the bad and the negative, and whenever things are coming to light, and people are telling their truth and they're telling their stories, and um, that's where I find, more hope in humanity and community building, than I ever had before. When I was door to door organizing, we didn't have social media really back then; it wasn't really a thing. Um, and so, there's a lot going on where communities are organizing way faster over social media than we could have ever dreamed doing door to door work. And so it is, it's really, it's exciting to see, and it's exciting to be involved with whenever I can. Um, but yeah, I think, investing in those good stories are really important for my mental health and my soul.
Stacey, I so appreciate what you just said, because I, like you, many times find myself in the negativity rabbit hole, because if you're paying attention and you're not upset, and I'm not speaking about any particular issue, whatever issue, you know, pulls at your heart, whoever's listening, um, being angry and being upset is an act of love. I believe, and I think when you're upset about things that are happening in the world, it's because you care and you love about them. And I do spend a lot of my time angry and upset, but that takes a toll and it's taxing on the
Mhm.
spirit and the soul and the psyche. So to balance that out, you do have to input some content that is
Mhm.
hopeful. So, like you, I do spend a decent amount of my time um, digesting books, audiobooks on, yeah, things are pretty shitty now, but there's a way that we can make things better. and that's
Mhm.
and so thank you for spotlighting that because I think it's super important. And your story, I think, is one that needs to be told more. So I commend you and I appreciate you really for coming on here with me and giving me your time and everyone listening. Um, if you have something that strikes you like it did Stacy in her car that drives you and is pushing you and nudging you to take action on something that you believe in, then just do it and trust and have faith that things will fall into place. Stacy, at some point, we are going to meet in person. But for
Come on
now,
down to Austin.
I think I have a few open invitations, so I definitely may make that happen this year. But again, Stacy, thank you so much for joining me today.
Sure.
Zero Waste Strategies is Stacy's company. You can find her on LinkedIn and her website, which I think is a zero. What's your website? Is it zero waste?
Zerowaste.org. Yeah. It's the number zero,
Mm-hmm.
the digit, waste.org.
Great. And I'll put in the show notes a few links, especially to Stacy's training course for women that want to break into sustainability. Stacy, you're a gem and a national treasure, and keep doing everything that you're doing out there because your story is inspiring, and I appreciate everything you do.
Thank you, Jose. I appreciate all the kind words.
All right, everyone, have a great day, and we'll catch you on the other side.
Bye.
Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of the Green Collar Careers Podcast. A huge thank you to our guests for sharing their time and insights with us. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe. It really helps more people discover the podcast. You can also support the show by leaving a review or sharing this episode with someone who might find it helpful. And if there's a topic or guest you'd love to hear from, please let me know. DM me, reach out, shoot me an email. Thanks again for being part of this community, and I'll see you again next time.